Well, there we go. So I'm extremely excited to have Orlando Morales, the owner of House of Rhythm, which is a local yoga studio here off of Louis Pasteur, with us today. I'm actually a member there, which no favoritism, but I really enjoy it. If you're interested in that type of vibe, the hot yoga experience, just don't get next to me because I sweat a lot. That's just kind of my, if you don't want to slip. But the reality of it is that through the pandemic, through just entrepreneurship in general, opening up something, it isn't inherently arduous. Nothing is simple, nothing is easy. But especially for a service-based business and something in the health and wellness space, it can seem fairly daunting. As you know, with many things, there's no playbook. So getting to that starting line, opening, finding success can be extremely difficult. So today, I'm really happy to have as part of our San Antonio Entrepreneurship Week, the discussion of what I'm going to just call the mantra-preuneur, which is about setting up or starting a business in that health and wellness space. But we'll actually kind of touch on a number of topics, and you'll have the opportunity to chime in as well. So Orlando, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd love it if you don't mind just giving us a little bit of background about who you are. We already just talked a little bit about some of the other entrepreneurial endeavors that you've had. So I'd love to get a chance for others to get that background as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. So my name is Orlando Morales. I'm Lando. I go by Lando. And I am the owner of House of Rhythm. It's a hot yoga studio. It's a heated yoga studio. We have a great sound system. It's candlelit. It's a beautiful space to come and flow and do stuff. I'm also the business manager for Kelly Morales, MDPA. She's a local obstetrician gynecologist, and we run a very busy practice right next to the yoga studio, just right up the street. I also have a property company where we just acquired Oak Hills Tower. It's a professional building right next to Methodist, and we're just getting ready to do the big demolition and then rebuild of a new tower. I'm a registered nurse. I'm a local DJ with a pretty broad following in San Antonio, stay-at-home dad, and just an all-around, I like doing stuff. I'm a creator.
I dig it. And I think, with many entrepreneurs, that's kind of where it starts, there is this inherent passion to build things. And so I'm really curious, when in your journey as a human, when did you get this creative juice to say, you know what, I want to do something by myself, or this, I think, is the route I want to take, is to be self-employed, to build business. And, for many people, there's this inherent risk. So at some point that's changed for you, ideally.
It did.
You said, you know what?
Completely.
Yeah, this is what's up. So I'd love to learn more.
So, it's like I grew up in San Antonio. My parents owned a business that failed, and it failed spectacularly. They ended up owing a lot of money to the IRS. The IRS came and seized a whole bunch of things, and it really left my taste for entrepreneurship. Just like, I was never going to do it. I always pictured in my life, like, okay, I want to get a job with like Anheuser-Busch or HEB or something like that, where I could, where I could just do what it is that I needed to do, get a retirement, watch Ken's 5 News at 5 o'clock, just have that kind of life. And I believe that that's what I was going for. I joined the Army in the 90s, and I became a registered nurse through the Army. And I always thought that, okay, I'm going to get a job at a hospital when I get out, and I'm just going to follow the path that I'd chosen. I guess about 2010, I had an opportunity to just, play around. I've always had an interest in restoring cars. I was surrounded by a whole bunch of modern classics, BMWs, VWs, that kind of thing. And I just took the plunge. I told my wife I want to take a year off and just fiddle, do stuff. And I ended up making a lot of money, like more money than I was making as a registered nurse for the United States Army. It was some good stuff. And at that point I was like, you know what, this is something I don't think I could ever work for somebody ever again. But it took me a while to like finally, go into actual business, with a tax ID number and, registering with the Secretary of State and all that other stuff. And that was medical practice. So my wife got out of the Army in 2014. She got out of active duty in 2014. And we couldn't figure out what we wanted to do. She was looking to partner up with she's a physician, to partner up with like a local medical group or something like that. And we decided that, you know what, let's open up our own practice. How hard could it be? And we did. And it was very stressful at first. We went through all of our savings. I ended up having to take out, quite a bit of personal loans in order to cover, those first couple of years where it was tough. But afterwards, it was just like, it was life-changing. And when I say life-changing, it was life-changing. Like, you think about, I used to remember like when you're a kid or whatever, it's like, what would I do if I won the lottery? Like that kind of life-changing. But, there was work to it. And I wanted to do more. And so I kind of looked into dabbling into real estate. I was thinking about flipping houses. I was already a DJ, so I was, getting gigs on the weekend, making some pretty good coin doing weddings, doing big events and stuff like that. But I really wanted to do something more. I was a little bit lost. I hurt my back in 2017. Somebody suggested I try yoga. I really liked it. It was so much fun. I decided that, that I was a yogi and I was going every day. I was going to Black Swan. I was going to Gold's Gym. I was going to 5 Points, just like loving it. And then it became like a travel thing. So anytime we traveled out of state, it's like we go find a local yoga studio. We went to New York City in 2019 for our 20th wedding anniversary. We found this candlelit yoga studio that was like, it was the bomb. It was fantastic. Rather than going anywhere else, our entire stay, that entire week, we just kept on going to that studio. Like every morning we'd head off to this place that just had amazing atmosphere. It was candlelit, it was like smoky and just like great. And on the flight home, my wife was like, somebody needs to bring that to San Antonio. I'm like, yeah, somebody does. Somebody should do that. And she looks at me and she's like, that's you, Lando. You need to do this. And I was like, okay. So that was January 2019. January 7th, 2019. That very day, there's this entrepreneur podcast that I listen to called How I Did This with Guy Raz. It's an NPR podcast. It's really, really good. If you're into entrepreneurship, like that's the one to listen to. And they did their podcast on Soul Cycle. And I don't know if you know the Soul Cycle model, but it's basically these 3 women got together. They wanted a place where they could ride, stationary bikes, get a workout, have fun, listen to great music. And there was nothing like that in New York City. Within 5 years, they took that idea, they spread it nationwide. They got bought out for $90 million. Like each of the founders walked out with this incredible payout. And I'm like, that's a sign. That's something I can do. Let me try this. So I enlisted a few friends and a yoga instructor that I knew and a personal trainer that I knew. And I told them all about what I wanted to do. And, they agreed to help me. And so, we had to trudge through. Like I had to figure out, did that answer the question? Like what sparked my juices? That's what sparked my juices.
Yeah,
Just
no,
like,
I'm digging the evolution. So, if you want to continue, you're more than welcome to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, I partnered up with these 2 people and I just don't think they were ready. They weren't ready for what I wanted to do. I kind of move at 100 miles an hour. It's like, I'm always thinking like the next step. And so they kind of left early on in the process, but I was not deterred. I wanted to continue on. I went out and I figured out what it was that I wanted the studio to look like. So I wanted a nice small space, right? I wanted it to be heated, but infrared heated. I really like the infrared heat. I like the health benefits of it. And being a DJ, I just wanted to have an amazing sound system. And so we started looking for spaces that would kind of fit that bill. We found the space in the medical center. I hired an architect, just somebody just randomly, you know, it's like, and I think he did a really good job, you know, getting our concept out. And it was just a matter of just like, you know, like finding the money to do this, finding the money to do that. Like, how are we going to be doing this? I ended up taking a lot of money that I had. I get paid from my job, so I bootstrapped. I know that you're not really supposed to be doing that, but I took 100% of my salary and I threw it into this project. I borrowed $50,000 from Broadway Bank, who we had a relationship with, and I used the contractors that I'd used to do some restoration work for my house, and we all got together as a team and we created the space. It took us, so from the time that I had the idea on January 7th until the time that we opened December 13th, you know, like right around 11 months, you know, and it was great. It was fantastic. I found somebody to help me run the space, found somebody to help me hire some great instructors. And I think we have amazing instructors. And I found somebody to do our social media, you know, to just make that splash out there. And we ran hard, man. And we were really on this really good trajectory. So, you know, December, you know, our total sales were about $1,200. You know, that January we're right around $4,000. That February $8,000. That March, you know, right around March 15th, we were at $8,000. Takes about, you know, $16,000 a month to run this space. So we were right on track, fast. March 17th, you know, the president gets on the, you know, in the Oval Office behind the desk saying coronavirus is real. And that was it. It was just, we just went like from up here to like zero. So our April was dismal, and it just kind of went like that. And so I had to figure out like, what can we do to survive? And we did. We survived. And here we are today, experience a whole new renaissance. It's like we had three beginnings. We had three grand openings. So we had the grand opening, you know, in December, right? We had the grand opening June 1st when we reopened after quarantine. And then this last time we got a new manager who's like absolutely fantastic, Nikki. I got a new social media manager, Dusty, who's doing an amazing job. And it was like this rebirth, right, in March. And so here we are in March. It's like we've all started all over again. We have a great staff. We have a great space. And Ryan, you know what the atmosphere is like. It's just like, it's a wonderful place to be. I love it.
No, it's super dope. I'm not a paid participant for this study, just FYI. But so, you know, Lando, I mean, the great part is that you've had a number of experiences that have prepared you to successfully create this model that seemingly is working. But I want to make sure that you, or rather, I want to understand how you came to that model. Like, it sounds like you kind of already knew what to do. You're like, okay, we need a manager, we need a social media person, we need this. How did you even figure out, oh, I need all these things?
I think a lot of it is just knowing yourself, you know, and I like to tell this story about growing up in San Antonio, you know, going to Holmes High School and going to Saul Ross Middle School on the west side. It wasn't called the west side back then, but on the west side of San Antonio. And there wasn't a lot of, I had the typical family, you know, it's like, you know, with the tia that would show up on your birthday and say, mijo, I promise to get you a birthday present on Friday when I get paid, and then never show up again. You know, there was a lot of like these unfulfilled promises. A lot of people would have these big dreams, but, you know, it was always talk. My wife, on the other hand, you know, who went to Smithson Valley, and she, you know, she had this a whole different upbringing. And for her, it was just doing it. You know, if you said you want to do it, do it. Do it. Just make it happen. And when I realized this, it was, we'd been married for a couple of months. She had said, you know, we should go to Spain. And I'm like, yeah, let's go to Spain. Someday we go to Spain. You know, it's like someday, right? And she's like, no, let's do it this summer. And that just blew my mind. It's like, you know, like, you can't do that. Who can do that? Nobody can just go to Spain. And we did. Like, it was just like, okay, let's get our passports, buy plane tickets, get on a plane, go. And we did it. And I came to the realization that you can do anything. Like anything can be done, right? And so, you know, that's what propelled me to go to nursing school. That's what took me on. And just having that mentality that anything that anybody has ever done before can be done. And you can do it. So knowing that, right? So it's like you kind of like tell yourself, I can do this can be done. And so then taking it to like, how did we know to do all these other things? Just looking at other people, like looking at other businesses, looking at other industries. So social media I knew was important, especially in today's market. And I would look at other social media accounts. So Instagram, when we opened up, Instagram was kind of like the thing. TikTok was just kind of like just starting. And I was looking at other yoga studios, Instagram, right? And I saw what drew people's attention. I saw how they got their word out. I saw how many likes and shares things would have. And I knew I didn't have the skills to do that, right? I'm great with like graphic art. I'm great with like creating things, but like getting the word out there was not my forte. So I specifically looked for somebody in the industry to do that. As far as like managing people, I'm not a people manager. I'm a people person, but you know, I know that I'm a big softie. I know that that I'm kind of like a pleaser, right? And so I knew that if I were to manage people, I would just mess it up for them, because you know they're not getting, you know, they're not getting the direction or anything that they need, and I'm not getting what I need because I'm just getting walked over. So I knew I need to hire somebody to take care of that. So it was like kind of a self-awareness, and finding the right person was just a matter of just like going out there and asking. As far as like starting the business, there's a lot out there on the internet that tells you, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to get a name, you got to start whatever. And it really is just like asking around. You have a network of people, and I'm sure you know other entrepreneurs that can give you guidance. I'm very lucky that I'm surrounded by a number of entrepreneurs in my neighborhood. So Jacob Valenzuela from Deco Pizzeria, he's been a mentor. I've known him for over a decade now, and he's really helped me, like told me how to do stuff. I have a lot of relationships with some of the bars that I work at, and you know, they were always giving me advice. They told me, make this an S corp. You know, that way you can be taxed on your income and not on the corporate taxes. You know, other people were telling me, you know, you're going to need this type of insurance. Getting a trademark, that was something that somebody told me early on. You know, get your name trademarked so nobody can steal that from you. And so it was just a matter of like putting it out there. Hey, I'm doing this, and then listening to what other people have to say, because people have a lot of great information for you.
No, that's really, I mean, the evolution of like what you were saying about, hey, you can't just go to Spain. Like, what are you talking about? Like that, like the light bulb just like kind of goes off for me at many points. I'm just like, in my head, everything is just, yeah, just do it. Like, and it never really clicked with me as to why it would be that. And then you explained that situation. I was like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, I guess you can just do it. Like, so I want to step back a minute in your career and go to your time in the military. I know that was just kind of a brief instance, but we do see a number of different military folks go through our programming. We see a lot of folks that come through it. But you know, it's an environment where oftentimes you're told what to do, and maybe you fall into a pattern like that. And so I'm curious, what were there any influences on that, or were there things that you had to overcome from that mentality, or was it easy to pass your way into becoming an entrepreneur? And really, another thing I've noticed is that you're really seemingly good at just saying like, oh, I'll just look it up, or I'll just ask people. And for many folks, that's not necessarily the first answer. So it's a loaded question. I don't know where you want to take it, but
so the military, I was in the military for 17 years. And so I started out enlisted. I was a surgical tech. Actually, I was in Signal during Desert Storm 1, and my AIT was the entire course of the war. And so after I was done, they didn't need us anymore. They asked me if I want to reclass, and I'm like, give me something in air conditioning. So they put me as a 91 Delta, and that got me into the healthcare field. And I figured that that's where I was going to go. And then after my enlistment was up, which was a 6-year enlistment, that's what I had signed for. I had the opportunity to go green to gold. Well, I didn't do green to gold. I did ROTC, and I did the Army College Fund, and I did the GI Bill. That kept my foot inside the military, and because I wasn't ready to let go. I was really afraid of what the outside world had in store for me. And then, I came into, I got commissioned in 2003, and, I just kept my mouth shut. Like, I didn't tell anybody that I was prior enlisted. They just thought I was a high-speed lieutenant that knew it was up. And I just listened to my mentors. They gave me, because I was so squared away from the beginning, they gave me a lot of freedom. They gave me assignments to manage people. I ended up managing an emergency room for like 3 years. Holy shit. And it just kind of built on that. It's like being able to talk to people, influencing people to do things that they don't necessarily want to do or are not necessarily inclined to do. Being able to talk to people that, feel comfortable, being able to talk to people that are higher up, being respectful of people that are subordinate to you, and really developing, what it is. Listen to this. Okay. So when I was enlisted, when I joined the service, I joined right during Desert Storm, but it was this whole different mentality. Like, everybody that joined the military was doing it for the college money. The GI Bill was great. The Army College Fund was something that they had just started. They just did this thing where they weren't allowed to hit you in basic training anymore. And so the mentality there in the service was like, the Army's going to give me something, right? And so they could pretty much treat you like shit. Once I got commissioned and I was an officer, it was different because I was commissioned in the time after 9/11. It's like we were in the middle of OEF, OIF, right? And the people that were coming in there, the enlisted folks that were coming in there were volunteering. They were in there because they wanted to come do something for their country. They weren't asking for anything back. And so you had to treat them as such. You had to really respect what they were doing and show respect to them. And I learned that lesson early on. Somebody pulled me aside. I think I was barking orders to some, private or something like that. And they're like, look, man, you can't talk to people like that. That's uncool. And it really just put me in that mindset of, you need to treat people with respect. Listen to what they have to say. They have great ideas. And I take that all the way up to my business right now, to House of Rhythm. Everything that we do, like we offer, it's a heated yoga class, right? And so, the temperature gets up to 97 degrees, you're sweating. After the class, you're just like, you're like exhaling all this hot air. And the instructors come by and they put an ice cold refrigerated towel that's got essential oils on. And it's like, you just kind of like melt down into the ground. It feels so good. Well, that came as an idea from one of our instructors. Our instructor was like, what would be really cool is if we put these ice cold towels. I'm like, oh, let's do that. That's cool. The other things that we've done, just about everything that we do in that studio is based on what the instructors suggest. And being able to like take what it is that they're offering me and offer it to them does wonderful things. Great. It's great for the business, right? It's great for the clients, but it's also great for the instructors because they feel listened to. They feel like an affinity to our space. They feel valued and like they stick around, right? Like our instructors stay with us. We have instructors that go and they teach at other studios, a lot of other studios. Some teach, like down at the Rim, some of them over here, over there next to downtown, some they all teach other places, but they consider House of Rhythm home. And they consider House of Rhythm home because we let it be their home. And having good people behind you is so important. So I guess that's what I took from the military. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Like the biggest lesson.
No, I appreciate it. I always like to talk about that. I know it's some people are a little uncomfortable talking about it, but I like to bring it up just because it's such a, I do see a great pattern of folks that come out and like, I think I want to chase this dream of education and do all these things. And then a couple of years later, like, I just can't take orders from people anymore. Like, and so then they start their own journey. So I was curious if that fell into yours at all. But one one of the things I really loved about House of Rhythm is that they remember my name somehow. And I'm just like, oh, wow, that's really, especially like at the second time you show up, they're like, hey, what's up, Brian? I'm like, well, that's different. Like, how do you remember me? So there are all these like little nuances that you have in building the business. And I'm not coming from inherently I don't know, actually, are you a yoga instructor at all?
I'm actually going to YTT, yoga teacher training right now. Yeah. I'm in the middle of it. I had no intention of doing that as soon as I did, but the opportunity fell, and I'm going to start teaching probably in August.
And that's not like, many people come from outside of industry and start businesses in the industry that they're in. But what I'm really curious about is you talk about this passion to create this business from, you have back pain and it made a big difference to you. And you were like, you know what, I think I want to start a place that maybe provides people a similar benefit. So, how did that, you talked about your wife inspired you to kind of push forward on the dream, but I guess why yoga, or why did that have to be the thing, or, just made that much of a difference to you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just something that I loved and that I was passionate about, and it really made sense. I honestly don't know. It's like it could have been anything. It just, yoga seemed like the right pick, There's some great yoga studios in San Antonio. It's not like there was like a tremendous need for another yoga studio to show up in San Antonio. But once she made the suggestion that this is what we need to do, and I saw that I could bring something different and be successful at it, it's like, it just became my number one focus. Like, really, it was never like I hadn't sat back for years thinking someday I'm going to open a yoga studio or something like that. It was just like, it really was, January 7th, she said, let's open a yoga studio. And January 7th, I decided to open a yoga studio. So, and yoga is great. I love yoga. I love it.
No, I think that's really incredible. So, I mean, I really enjoy the fact that this was just, it was an internal passion, then kind of the exposition. Someone else was like, hey, you seem to be really into this. You should probably do it. And you're like, oh yeah, no, that's one thing. And then you did it. So
I think the other thing is too, so I'm a DJ and I love music. Music is like a big passion of mine. And I knew that bringing music and yoga together, people do it, it's not a new concept, but I think that a lot of people kind of do it wrong. It's like you go, we have this one instructor, Lupe, who's incredible, and she does her flows to where it really is an arch, and you end up just feeling amazing. And part of the experience is the music, right? Mm-hmm. And I just wasn't getting it from the other spaces. So I knew that I could bring something else to that, right? And people used to tell me, like, that's perfect. It's like nobody's better to bring this idea to fruition than you are. And that kind of like fueled me on.
No, I really agree. I think that bringing the two concepts together is inherently unique. And for some people that are a little bit more fidgety like me, it helps kind of keep my mind clear when something else is going on, like music. So in terms of getting started, you talk about sort of, you wanted a small space, you already kind of knew you wanted infrared. And a lot of that, I guess, you pulled from the experiences of other places that you had gone to. What did you pick that you knew would work? Or has there been anything that you've looked at and you're like, man, that totally didn't work so far?
Everything that we've done so far, I mean, other than like the COVID stuff, Zoom was really hard to do. Like Zoom was like, to get the experience from House of Rhythm onto the screen, it's like you're limited on your camera. It's really hard to like get the music in there without it sounding echoey. I just didn't really like the quality of that. So, we did Zoom for a little bit, and as soon as we could stop doing Zoom, I cut it out and I started doing on demand. On demand was a big deal too, because of the quality of the videos that I wanted to produce. Like I wanted like Peloton quality videos, but I have like, you know, an iPhone budget. So like, how do you do that? And so we spent a lot of time perfecting that. We ended up getting like two old iPhones having two angles, you know, and we bought some microphones and we'd feed them all into a laptop and get everything recorded. And then we'd spend an hour or two like editing each video. And over the course of the pandemic, we did, oh gosh, over 100 videos that, you know, so that's like 100 hours of editing. It's like 100 hours of like performing plus hundreds of hours of doing whatever. And I don't think we ever recouped the money on that. And as soon as we could stop making those videos, it was done. I'm done with that. Never again. But so that's something that didn't work. Everything else, it's just like, you know, it was all just like you said. I took it from other studios. I took ideas from other studios, like the candlelight. I mean, you know, we're not the first candlelit yoga studio out there. And seeing how other people did it was just real easy. Okay, so they get these battery operated candles. They sell those on Amazon for X amount of dollars. You know, it's like, let's bring those in. The infrared panels, you know, it's like you type in infrared panel, you Google it, and there's, you know, companies that are out there that will design systems for you, right? You know, ranging anywhere from like 10 grand to like $50,000. And so did a little bit of research on that, figured out what I needed and was able to do that. As far as like renting my first space or like getting my oh, I forgot the name of it. They call it a degree name, but it's like your brick and mortar. I got my brick and mortar, I got my brick and mortar. That was all like trial by fire. I didn't know how to do that. So I had a real estate agent friend that kind of like walked me through it. And even then it was like, I didn't, like when I signed the lease, I thought I was going to start having to pay rent on this space, right? And so I sent in my first check and they're like, no, it doesn't, you don't start paying rent until, you know, until you actually break ground and stuff like that. So that was all taken care of. There was a lot of things that I had to learn, but it wasn't anything that was extraordinary because it was basically just taking what other people had done before and applying it to what I needed to do.
Makes a lot of sense. And in terms of, so now you've been around for a little bit, things are ideally moving back towards on track, if you will. You know, how do you, I mean, what exactly, I guess, does success look like for a business like yours? How do you define, I mean, because, you know, this is inherently started by passion, but it's got to be a business at some point to maintain. So,
Yeah.
You know, I'm curious, what does it look like for you in terms of success in building this studio?
So it's like a bunch of little goals. So, you know, of course, the first goal is like opening up the space. Like that was like, okay, can we do this? Can we get this started? I know from previous experiences that it takes a while to, you know, get into the black, you know, to actually make some money. So I gave myself a big lead time. I gave myself a year, not knowing that the pandemic was going to take over, but you know, it's like, I gave myself another year after that. Just being prepared. So getting people into the door, getting people to take the classes, getting people to share, getting people to like write these Google reviews was always like, those are our markers for success right now. In the coming months, we need to, our markers of success is the number of members that we have. So where we need to be in order to be like self-sustaining is 170. You know, if we have 170 members in the studio can take care of itself. And so like, that's our next goal. And so that's our next marker for success. And once we do that, the marker after that is building number 2 and taking all the lessons that we took from building this first one and applying it towards our next yoga studio, which is going to be, you know, in another part of town. And then from there, making that successful, you know, there's not like one level of success. It's like you make your goal, you're successful, you reach for your next goal, you're successful, you reach for your next goal, you're successful. In the end, what I really want is I want to be I want to have this concept. I want to have it all in San Antonio, all along the Southwest. I want to go to Dallas. I want to go to Houston. I want to go to El Paso. I want to go to Santa Fe. I want to go to Phoenix. I want to go up to Denver. I want to go to Oklahoma City. And then I want somebody to come and offer me $90 million. And then I go do something else. That's the success.
That's super inspirational. And one of the things that I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs about is that idea of scale. But it's sometimes it's not always top of mind, or achieving scale is something that can feel daunting to people. So I'm kind of curious, how did that kind of solidify in your head? Like, oh, I don't just want to have one, I want to have 10, or I want to have 20, or I want to have, build the empire, versus like, man, I just want to have one. I think that's something that people have a hard time overcoming.
I think just in my research, I just seeing what can be done, like Black Swan Yoga, like that was somebody's idea. It's, Y7 is somebody's idea. There's a lot of these businesses that you see out there that you think are like, like it was this team of people that came together and it's like, we're going to do this thing. It was just really one person's idea. And knowing that it came from the mind of one person, it just made it easy to say, okay, well, this is what I want to eventually strive for. How do I get there? And it really is, you got to think small and just like work one step at a time. You can only do one thing at a time. It's like you set your goal. You're like, okay, I want to rent a space, right? Like that's the number one goal. I need to rent a space. So you make that your focus, your purpose, you get your space. Now I want to build out this space. And so then like each step gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you have everything together. And it becomes easy. If you go in there, it's like, I need to do this. You'll just like talk yourself out of it. You're like, well, where am I getting the money? Like when is in, you just set the little goals and you just make each of those happen, with a final destination in mind. You know what I'm saying? That's the way I do it. I don't know how it would work for other people, but for me, it's like, I know what I want to do. I just need to figure out how to get there. And I just take the little steps, to get there each step of the way.
Have there been, sorry, I didn't mean that.
No, go for it. Yeah.
But have there been, I guess, where did you learn that methodology? Is it, was it through reading? Is it through following other people's footsteps? You mentioned your family had a business. Was that how they operated? Or was it?
Restoring cars.
Oh, okay.
It was restoring cars. It's like, I remember figuring out how it was that, just like everybody else, it's like you have uncles that have the trashy car that they want to fix up. Someday, Mijo, I'm going to fix that car up and I'll take you for a ride. And, it's like they would never happen. And when I first started doing it, I guess I've been restoring cars for a long time. I was 16 years old. Somebody pulled me aside and was like, all right, you got to think about it. Like, it's like, you can't just do the cosmetic stuff. It's like, you got to have a good foundation first. So it's like, where do you want to start? It's like, you want to start, you want to make sure that you have a great body, that you have, great brakes, wheels, make sure the engine's running right, make sure the electrical's running right. And then you can start looking at the cosmetic stuff. And it's like, you just take each little piece, you make it all work until you have this finished product that's gorgeous, that you're proud to show off. And I've used that method, not only for restoring cars, but like restoring my house, building a business, making a video, teaching my kids. It's like, that's just the way I do it. It's like, okay, well, where do we want to go? How are we going to get there? All right, one step at a time.
Well, that's, I mean, it's really great to hear that, because it's a path that a lot of people struggle to get on, is having that order and sort of compartmentalizing elements of their business in order to execute, right? And folks, if you're interested, more than welcome to drop questions in the chat, or unmute if you would like to. I'm just going to keep it rolling, but feel free, if you'd like to ask something, you can do so as well. So I'm curious how similar this has been to your other business experiences. Just, I mean, the yoga studio model, service-based business, I suppose it could fare relatively similar to a medical practice in a somewhat different sense. But I mean, how different or similar would you say that some of these have been to this current one?
So it's similar, right? So like accounting, right? The accounting is virtually the same. You have, you have money coming in, fee for services that are coming in. You have expenses that are going out. You need to get the word out. So you're advertising. You need somebody to manage the personnel to get things done. So you have that. You have the personnel to do the jobs. You have the techs, the billers, the nurses, those kinds of people. And it's the same thing in the yoga studio. In the yoga studio, it's like you have expenses, you have expenditures, you have to pay taxes. You need somebody to run the day-to-day operations of your business. You have to have people to execute what you need to get done. You need to take care of those people. So in that sense, it's very similar. The difference with the medical practice, of course, is it's very, very regulated, and everything has to be perfect, right? As opposed to a yoga studio, you have a lot more leeway. It's like, the Secretary of State, if you tell him that you made X amount of dollars, he's going to believe you and and just pay him his money. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of thing. As opposed to like in a medical practice, I mean, like everything is scrutinized. But other than that, I mean, it's all the same. It's like, it's a business. A business is a business. It doesn't matter whether you have a restaurant or a medical practice or a yoga studio or you fix computers. It doesn't matter. It's all a business, and you got to think about it in that way.
I always like to say that too. A business is business. It's just, what widget are you selling?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we had a conversation about opening a restaurant, and it's something that I'm hoping to do in the near future. And I'd like to get a lot of advice on how to do that. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure that I could figure it out. I could at least figure out, the nuts and bolts of it, and whether or not I'm any good at like making good food or something like that, that's yet to be seen. But the fact, building the business up, I think it's all the same all the way around.
So yeah, before we started the conversation live, we were talking a little bit about competition, and specifically one of the things that I've heard you bring up a number of times so far is your community reaching out to mentors, right? And so I know that a lot of people feel intimidated by reaching out. Oh, they're not going to give me any answers. Why would they tell me whatever? But you've already mentioned that you have a number of mentors, and so I'm curious, how did those relationships manifest for you? Was it you approaching them? Did they approach you? Was it just you just kept showing up and they're like, hey, what are you doing here so much? Like,
so it really is just like putting it out there. It's like you just put it out there. It's like I have like like an elevator pitch or whatever, and you tell people about it. You tell everybody that you know about it. It's like, hey, I'm looking to open this yoga studio. I have this concept in mind, and I'm really excited about it. And they're like, oh, you should talk to so-and-so, or hey, let me put you in contact with so-and-so. Or they'll say, these are the things you should really start considering. And you just kind of like take that in. You thank them for, the advice that you've given them. You include them, like, whenever, like your grand openings and your big events, it's like you invite them out to like thank them, and later they help you out with other stuff. There's one person that I really wish I would have reached out to when I opened the yoga studio, but I was nervous. I was worried that, she was going to think that I'm like taking her idea or something like that. So I didn't. And I kind of regret that. But yeah, just be bold and ask, like, and tell everybody, like, not just the people that you think can help you, tell everybody what you're doing, because somebody knows somebody. Somebody always knows somebody, or somebody has some great advice that they can give you. And it's amazing how the community kind of comes together and like supports you and raises you up, and they want to see you succeed. So, just I guess to manifest it is to manifest it. Just tell people what's up.
Okay. And so you talked about initially being a little bit, and I'll get to that question just in a second, Eric. You talked about initially being intimidated by asking somebody for a question. Did you ever eventually reach out? And is that why? No? Still
No,
a little?
no.
Okay.
And it's sad too, because, I mean, she's not a competitor. I mean, she's a competitor, but she's not a competitor. But I feel like I would have really liked to have that relationship with her right now, and I don't. And there's no real way to get it right now, because we're kind of trying to come out of the pandemic together. You know what I'm saying? And so she's got her thing going, I got my thing going, and hopefully at the end I'm gonna be like, hey, I wish I would have came out to you and talked to you about this, but I never did. So no,
Gotcha.
we haven't.
Okay. So Eric actually has a question here in the chat, and it's how long has House of Rhythm been established in the medical 410 I-10 area, and then why did you choose that location?
Okay, so we've been open for over a year and a half, a little bit over a year and a half. We opened December 13th, 2019. We chose that particular area just its approximation to my house, approximation to my other job, and then we saw that there wasn't very much out here. There was like 2 other yoga studios, and we saw that there was a need for this particular area. I didn't want to go, downtown and compete with the other 3 yoga studios or the other 4 yoga studios that were there at the time. I wasn't interested in going into Alamo Heights because I don't have any connections to that area. We chose the medical center because I have a relationship with the medical center. I work in the medical center. It made sense. I think if I could do it again though, I would have gone West Side. I would have gone to like Brook City Base, or I would have gone to 151. So there's a real need there.
Okay, so mainly need-based is how you would identify that next, or that maybe if you were to redo it.
Yeah, if I were to redo it, I'd be out there. Where I don't want to go is I don't want to go where it's oversaturated. It's like, so obviously I'm not going to go out to Stone Oak. I'm not going out to the Rim right now. Right now I want to be the big fish in my little pond. And okay. The way to do it is just go where their need is.
Awesome. Hopefully that answered your question, Eric. Let's see. And he has a follow-up question here. So if you open up another House of Rhythm, do you have plans to open another branch here in San Antonio, or would you focus on another city entirely?
No, so eventually I want to have 3 in San Antonio before I go branch out to other cities. What I'm looking for, I mean, I'll just tell you. So what I want is I want a bigger space. I think COVID taught me that even though our space could hold 30, nobody feels comfortable right now being in that space. So we can't put it at capacity. So I think now I just want to have like a bigger studio that can legit hold 30, 6 feet apart. And I want to put a juice bar in it. And where I want it to be is out there where I was saying, Brook City Base, 151, out on that part of town where there's not a lot of yoga love, but there's a lot of people who love yoga,
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. And folks, if you also have questions, you're more than welcome to drop them in the chat, or you are able to unmute yourself as well. So again, we're talking with Lando Morales, the founder of House of Rhythm, which is located in the medical center. Go ahead.
There was a lot of things that happened during the build of this. And then, once we opened, and of course, COVID, like I always said that when all this is through, like when I reach that part where I can say success, that I'm going to have a big cry, I'm just going to and I'll have some great stories to tell, because there were so many roadblocks along the way, and each one was successively worse. It almost felt like, okay, this is, but then you get through it and then you learn. So if anybody want to ask me about any of that stuff, I'd be happy to answer some of that.
Yeah, I guess, well, I mean, while we're on that vein, can can you talk a little bit about maybe something that you weren't expecting that would be a roadblock that turned out to be a bit of a headache for you?
So, I mean, like the very first thing, like starting up the business, coming up with the idea and looking for people to come help you put this thing together. I immediately identified some people that I thought would be great partners in this. And of course they weren't ready. They didn't feel like they were. But like losing my two partners in the beginning, like in March of 2019, very early on in the process, was devastating to me. Like it felt like, oh, now I can't do this. I don't have anybody experienced to help me. This is going to be horrible. How can I move on? And that really was the best thing that happened, right? You know, it's like I was able to do what I needed to do without being hindered by anybody else, right? Um, and and so like from that lesson, it just kind of like built on. So it's like I had this initial disappointment, things didn't work out, let's move on. And then it became like a story or in my backstory. And then, you know, there was like at every step of the way, there was an issue. There was an issue, you know, like with our architect that we had hired. He seemed really good on paper. He really understood the concept, but he didn't have any sense of time. And you know, we knew what we needed to, we knew in order to be on schedule, we were looking to open in September of 2019, which meant that we needed to get this thing going right away. We found our place in April, found the architect around the same time, and we were thinking, okay, let's get this thing going by, you know, by the summer, and that way we can be ready to open. And I think in July 4th or something, like July 4th weekend, you know, we still didn't have a design. We still didn't have plans. I had contractors that were waiting to go. I had a space that was waiting to get done. And, but we worked through that. Like, it's such a small thing. It's so in the past right now, but you know, it's like things like that happen. We have this beautiful mural that's out. It's out on the side of the building. And I knew that I wanted to have that. And I kind of briefly mentioned it to our landlord, and I came up with a design, and she absolutely hated it. And she was like, "You can't have this," and you know, it became this thing. And so I decided, you know what? Let me present to her why it would be beneficial to everybody to have this beautiful mural on the side of her building. And I came in there just ready to go, right? But my landlord is a businesswoman, and my landlord is used to running shit. And so almost immediately, you know, she took over the meeting and she gave her perspective. You know, she said, you know, I run these other successful businesses, but I've always wanted to have like something of my own. And I have this building and I put a lot of love into it. And, and, and I spent a lot of money on it to make it as beautiful as it is right now. And I don't want some ugly piece of art on there. And so I listened to her, I listened to what she had to say. And it turned out she just didn't like the color scheme of our mural. She gave us the entire wall. Like we just wanted like a little space, you know, where people could take like Instagram photos, like, hey, we're at House Rhythm. And I listened to what she had to say. And in the end, we got like that whole entire wall. And she loves it. And I love it. You know, there was a point where our name was in dispute. So our name is House of Rhythm, but it wasn't always House of Rhythm. We were thinking about calling it House of Home. And so all of our initial marketing from the time that we started doing pop-up events up until about October of 2019, you know, just a couple months before we opened, we were going by House of Ohm. House of Ohm is a record label that I really like. So Mark Farina, Colette, Heather, they are all fall under the House of Ohm record label. House of Ohm has ties to the LGBT community. Like, you know, like we were really into, you know, the show Pose at the time, you know, the Vogue culture, that kind of thing, and had this music vibe. And my name is Orlando Morales, you know, so Ohm, O-M. And I was just so enthralled with this name. And we got a cease and desist letter from another yoga studio. And even though our names weren't the same, it was similar enough to where we didn't have a leg to stand on. Like I reached out to my lawyer who recommended me to another lawyer. And they're like, we can try and fight this. You're probably going to lose. It's a big waste of money. You should really consider changing your name. And I was devastated. Like that, like at that point, like everything else was like small news. And this thing was huge. And we ended up brainstorming. We ended up coming up with House of Rhythm, which I like so much more than House of Home. Like this is mine. And not only do I like it better, it belongs to me. It's like I have the trademark on this thing. I can use it on merchandise. Nobody can use this name. It's like if anybody else tries to use House of Rhythm or anything that's similar to that, it's like cease and desist. It belongs to me. And so like all these hurdles that I went through, that I was just like, oh, this is terrible. How am I going to get through this? It ended up being like the best thing, losing the partners, the architect taking their time, the mural, the name, COVID, like all these things that we went through, we just got better and better and better. It's all been learning experiences, and you're going to go through that. Like things are not going to go as planned. I mean, they're not, and just be ready for it, and just accept whatever the outcome is, and make it yours, because if you do that, as long as you're moving forward, as long as you're shooting forward, you're going to be great. It's going to be fine.
I dig it. Again, folks, if you want to jump in, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself if you want to ask questions. Yeah, so Lando, in terms of managing people, and this is something that I've been very curious about. Granted, I know you have a manager for sure, and that's helped you organize and find other folks to get involved. But as the yoga culture is seemingly very instructor oriented, how does that work within a studio environment? That's, it's not like you show up to Target and everyone's like, oh yeah, I work for Target. Like you don't know me except for that one dude that got viral or whatever. But in a studio, everybody sort of has their own personality, has their own vibe, has their own following. So yes. I'm curious, how does that work within a studio? If you might talk about it.
Yeah. So immediately, like we've taken the position that the instructors are the stars. You can't have the studio without the instructors, and the instructors bring a lot to the space. You know what I mean? Like people come to our space to see Lupe or to see Dakota or to see, any of the other instructors that we have with us. And so like having the mindset of we have this space where you can teach yoga. We have everything that you need. We have a great sound system. We have the equipment. We have a way for you to get compensated for it. This is your space to do this, and we're gonna promote you. Like they're the stars. And so I don't know how it works in other studios, but in our studio, it's like we give total autonomy to them, as long as they meet the criteria. Like they're a good instructor, they keep everybody safe, they use candlelight, they like music, they have to like music. Like we turn away people who don't like music or is not into music, and they're good people, then they can flourish in our space. As far as managing them, I mean, they're easy to manage. They're, they tell you when they're available. You build a schedule. You show them the schedule that you want to have filled. They volunteer for those slots. They guard those slots with everything that they have. It's like they don't want to lose their space. And then, they show up every day and they teach the classes the way they want to teach it. The way we have the schedule laid out is like we have different types of flows. So we have like a vinyasa flow, the rhythm and flow. We have like a power flow, the Om power. We have slow vibes, which is, like a very intense, slower flow. We have bliss, which is a restorative flow. We have a beginner's flow. And so we have a good mix of those throughout the week, right? And we know how many we want to have per day. We know how many classes we want to have per day. We put that out there, and then the instructors kind of fill that in.
Awesome. So Eric has a question here. Did you have a construction allowance when you first leased out your space?
Yes, and it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. So I think they gave us $35,000, and building that space was closer to 100. We budgeted for 60 though. That's what happens. I mean, it's like, yeah, but it's very important. Like that allowance, you need it.
Sorry, did you say your construction allowance was only 5,000? Did I hear that?
35.
35. I was like, what?
35,000.
Yeah. Okay.
And I thought that was a lot of money at the time, and you burn through that quick. The other thing is like the construction allowance, they just so you know, they give it to you after you open, then you get it. Yeah. So you got to still have your own financing to put everything together.
You budgeted 60,000. The actual's 100,000.
It was close to 100, yeah, when all was said and done.
And it's important. I love a good yoga room. I'm sure.
Yeah, it really is. So it just, there's things you can't plan for, and there was mistakes that were made in the design that we needed to account for. You have this one of the things that was surprisingly expensive when we priced out the infrared panels. The infrared panels was about $10 for $10,000 for the system, right? But you have the electrical, you have the coding, it's like everything else just like added. And the infrared panels and the sound system took up all of my allowance. You know what I mean? And then we still had to build on top of that.
Awesome. So Mark has a question here in the chat. Are there any future plans for House of Rhythm to offer goat yoga, or I guess doga? Is that what it's called?
What's the noga?
No, doga, like dog yoga, I guess.
Oh, no, not at the time being. Although it's been suggested. So Cassandra with Ohm House, she's already doing that, like out at Confluence Park, and there's like legit goat yoga spaces with actual goats and a winery that are just all nearby in the city. I think the logistics for it are just, I didn't have too much fun doing goat yoga, and I don't want to step on Cassandra's toes, so I'm not planning on that. But I am interested in other stuff. We have like our drunk yoga, and we're doing yoga out there at the Point. It's rhythm and brews, and so that's a lot of fun. What else do we do? We have a static dance. That I'm surprised that it hasn't blown up yet. We're going to be doing midnight yoga, which is definitely going to be a blown up. Like San Antonio's going to love that. What else? We have like poetry workshops. We have a lot of stuff that we're doing, but with the animals, is somebody else is already doing that. I don't really have any interest in doing that right now.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, you talk about how it's really a matter of the instructors are the stars, right? So
they are.
In terms of that expansion point, right? That to me sounds like it might be an interesting challenge, because within the same city, perhaps you can sort of rotate people around. That might be helpful, but how does that work? How would you imagine it working when you expand into an unfamiliar territory? I don't know if you put too much thought into that, or if you already have ideas.
So eventually we're going to have to start training up some yoga instructors, and we are in the works of coming up with a business model to have like a YTT instruction. I don't think our space here at the medical center is big enough to handle that. You just need a little bit more space to have a yoga school. But we have 3 instructors that are 500-hour and can qualify to be yoga instructors or yoga teacher instructors. So you submit your curriculum to Yoga Alliance, you bring it down, and they approve it. You have to meet some criteria that they have, which I think we're ready to meet all that criteria. And then you just bring people in to train them. We also pay a lot of money. So I don't know if it's still the case, but when we opened up back in December 2019, we were the highest paying yoga studio in the city. And I would imagine that we still are. So our base pay is higher than most. And then we pay a per head on top of that. And plus we bonus people for, signing up members, selling memberships. And then we incentivize them. Like if somebody has an event, okay, so like the goddess gathering is a good example. So somebody has a goddess gathering, they come to us with an idea. I want to have this event, and 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 I think it would be fun. We can get X amount of people. If it's their idea and they help doing the marketing and they do all like the legwork to make it happen, our split is 60-40, which is better than anybody else in the city. It's like they get 60%. And I even took it one step further just to guarantee that, to encourage people to do this. I'm like, the first $100 is yours. It's like if you come up with an idea and it's solid and we can get this thing marketed, you're guaranteed $100. But if you're able to, if it goes off, you fill up the class. So something like the goddess gathering where it's $40 a head, you get 15 people in there. That's a pretty sizable paycheck for 2 hours or an hour and a half work, right? And so that attracts talent. Like people are sending us resumes all the time. People want to come work with us, and it's like eventually we want everybody to come work for us, but we only have so many hours in the day. We only have so many clients that can attend. So I don't think that there is a shortage of qualified yoga instructors to come and be stars in our studio. We can actually be a little bit selective with who we choose.
That's super insightful. Honestly, I had no idea how it worked. It's like, to me, it was just, I've been thinking about it a lot. Just like, how does a studio like this work when it's sort of bent on other people doing their thing with their personalities? It's like, I don't honestly have no idea how these things work. So super enlightening. I appreciate you providing that insight. So we have about, looks like about 18 minutes here, or 22. But I'd love to know just kind of in your, if you've gone through COVID, you've talked about sort of the three rebirths of your business of sorts. Had you started again today, what do you think might have been different, or what do you think you would have changed, maybe in terms of operating or selection of contractors, or just anything that you can think that would have made your life easier, or maybe less expensive in terms of today?
I would have chosen a bigger place, a bigger space. From the get-go, it's like I thought it was a perfect size space. I went in there, with my eyeballs, right? And I looked at the space and I'm like, we can do this here, we can put this here, we'll do this here, and that's plenty of space. It's going to be great, without realizing that there's like ADA compliance that you have to meet. So one of the things that we wanted to do is I designed these like showers / dressing rooms. So they were going to be 3x5, and we're going to put 3 along this wall. And then we're going to, it was going to be perfect. It was going to be great. And it turns out that you can't do that. It's like, it's gotta be able to be able to use a wheelchair, and the wheelchair needs to be able to turn around in that area. And the same thing with the hallways have to be a certain size. And it didn't occur to me that needed to happen. And so once it was revealed to me that I couldn't get what I wanted, I was a little bit upset, to say the least, but we made do. It's like, but yeah, it would definitely be a bigger space. And the same thing with our other business. Holy crap, we need a bigger space. It's like, as my wife's practice grew, that's what it is. You build a business that you want to have, not what you need right now, right? And so it's like, when we opened up our first practice, 2 exam rooms, we have an office, it's like there's an NST room, there's a place where we can do ultrasounds. That was fine, right? That was fine when we first started. Like, we couldn't fill that space when we first started. And now here we are 6 years later, and we have like a nurse practitioner and another nurse practitioner crammed in the same office as the physicians. It's like everybody's fighting for the exam room. It's like people are waiting in the hallway trying to get an ultrasound. Like she is so in demand right now. It's like everybody wants to come see her, but we don't have the space to come see her. The same thing with yoga studio. There's just not enough space. So build bigger, look bigger, get the biggest space you can afford. I think that may not apply for everything, but in my experience, in my two businesses, that's what it was.
Okay, let's see. Looks like there's another question here or comment. Energy medicine practice, always envisioned it as a virtual practice, infinite amount of space in the virtual world. I think it's maybe more of a comment. I don't know.
It's funny because during the pandemic, we went virtual. So we had, it's like we had to set up the software. It's like we had the cameras. We thought it was kind of cool at first. It's like having my wife here at home, doing the thing. And but in the end, it was just that interaction. It's the one-on-one interaction. It may be good for like, I don't know. So we did a virtual COVID test before we traveled. We went on holiday, and so they needed a COVID test right away. And so that was great virtually. But like having a one-on-one conversation with somebody, doing like a physical exam, you miss a lot of the nuance. I think that virtual is great. I think virtual is the future for a lot of things. But I think that in-person is, I don't think in-person is going to go away. It definitely doesn't work as well for yoga, doesn't work as well for medicine. It could work well for certain things, but it's like Peloton has a great model and that's virtual, right? Tonal has a great model and that's virtual. So it could work for a lot of businesses, but I think in-person is here to stay for a lot of others.
Thank you. Well, folks, do you have or any other questions? Or Lando, is there anything that you would like to talk about or mention, as we come closer to the conclusion of this?
I mean, come do yoga at House of Rhythm. Come take a class, see what it's all about.
I do have a question.
Yes.
And I can't help but interject. But when you found your space, did you have a commercial real estate broker specialist represent you in negotiating when leasing out that space?
Yes. So the person who represented me, that's what she does, is commercial. And so she just doesn't do leases, she sells commercial property and she lists commercial properties.
Okay.
But she knew the ins and outs. She knew stuff that I didn't know. It's like, to me, it was like, this is what the space is offering, and that's what it is. And I didn't know that they come back and you're like, it's a back and forth. Okay. So it's like, you tell them what you want to pay, you tell them how much money you want, you tell them all these things, and they either go for it or they don't. And then it's kind of goes back and forth until you get to the best deal that you possibly can. And there's like a lot of other things, it's not just, your build out, it's not just your initial rent. It's like, how much is the rent going to be increasing over time? It's the lease length. It's like, I decided to go with 7 years because I was very confident in my idea. But sometimes that may not be, that might not be the right decision for everybody. So having somebody there for you that can go to bat for you, do it. Like, don't try and do it yourself, and try to get like, you can get your Theo to do it, but unless your Theo does, commercial real estate, you probably want to get a specialist. I would recommend the person that I'd recommend the person that I used. Sometimes she's a little bit difficult to work with, but she's good. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I just bring that up because I'm with Bottom Line Realty Advisors, and we specialize in helping business owners lease office space, and we've been doing that for 20 years here in San Antonio.
Awesome.
So I just hear your story and your other business, and if you, I don't know how you want to connect and help you out with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
medical
As a matter
space.
of fact, if you want,
Yeah.
Ryan, if you can give him my email address, shoot me an email,
Okay.
and we're legitimately looking. Like, what I would like to do is, I would either like to have ground broken, a lease signed, or this place open by December 2021. You know, I
Roger
want to
that.
be in like the main planning spaces, and where I'm legitimately looking is out there 151, like Westover Hills. I think that space needs to be, it's just crying for House of Rhythm.
Great. Would love to sit down and learn more.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments, folks? And Lando, you were saying a second ago, you welcome people to come down to House of Rhythm and check it out.
Yeah. We could do something to where, so we got a great deal right now. We got a 7 for 30, which, normally yoga class, our drop-in rate is about 18 to 20 bucks. We have like dynamic pricing on our studio. Our membership is, 80 some odd bucks per month, for unlimited yoga. But most people that come in, in San Antonio, the drop-ins, between $10 and $20. So 7 yoga classes for $30 is the deal. Like that is great. You come in and, it's like you can take your pick of the classes, and there's no time limit on it. It's like we got stuff going on all the time. It's like we have the morning classes, the afternoon classes, we have weekend fun stuff that we do, and I'd love to see all of y'all out there.
Dig it.
As a longtime yogi, I plan on definitely making it out there. It looks great.
Oh, cool. Where do you normally practice at?
Well, I just moved back to San Antonio from San Diego.
But they have a great community there.
Incredible community.
Yes,
yeah,
you're gonna love San Antonio then.
I'm excited. I'm from San Antonio. I went to Churchill, and my dad's been practicing commercial real estate, specifically representing only small business owners and leasing and purchasing properties for 20 years here. So I'm here and happy to be able to be of assistance.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm in the market for a yoga studio. So I'm looking forward to trying yours out, Orlando.
I can assure you, it's like, there's some great yoga markets out there. I think New York City has a great one. Denver, Colorado has excellent yoga. Austin, of course, is like where all the great studios are. And San Diego is amazing. And I would take the Pepsi. I would have San Antonio take the Pepsi challenge on all of those cities. Like, we have great instructors, great studios. I think it's up there.
And the pricing compared to San Diego is incredible. Your pricing, I took a look at, is your offering is it makes practicing yoga achievable for the everyday person.
So that was the point. All right, that's the other thing that I forgot to mention. So it's like, when I was thinking of who our clients were, who I wanted to have yoga for, it was specifically for people who were not targeted at other studios. It's like, you go to a lot of these studios and it really is, it's very very upper middle class. There's not a lot of brown faces in there. It's supposedly a welcoming environment, but it's not really an environment where you necessarily feel comfortable. And I wanted to have something that was really, really accessible. I picture, the typical client would be, somebody that had, that either just graduated from college or was still in grad school, probably had their first job that they didn't like. They like going to Starbucks. They listen to, the pop radio station 96.1 or whatever. It's like they wanted to do yoga for so long, but the places that they go do yoga just doesn't appeal to them. It doesn't speak to them. So, either they conform to that or they just leave it entirely. What I wanted was a place where everybody felt welcome, but specifically the people who were left out. So we're like totally inclusive, right? Like everybody, but really these people. you know, the people that wouldn't feel as comfortable going to, you know, like, I don't want to name any names, other yoga studios in San Antonio. So
awesome, thank you. So I mean, we only have a couple minutes left, but I think unless if anyone has any other questions right now, we can take one more question or comment, and if not, then we can go ahead and move to closing the session.
Real quick, who should I reach out to for Orlando's point of contact? Or
you can reach out to us at team@launchsa.org.
Okay.
Or I could also, I'll just give my email address.
Okay, you could do that too. So,
okay, so it's Lando77, LANDO 77 at houseofom.fit.
.fit. Okay, copy that. Great.
Thank you.
Look forward to being in touch.
Right.
Learn more.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, have a great day.
Thank you, Eric. You too.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, last call for question. Okay, cool. Well, Lando, thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving us the time of day and sharing your words of wisdom and just kind of the journey that you've been on. I mean, I feel super enlightened to have heard it, and definitely helps articulate a lot of stuff that I didn't understand before. So hopefully we'll have you back at some point in the future to share the great success of opening up your second, third, or 29th location. So yeah, I dig it. Well, I appreciate you all for joining us today. And again, we will share the recording at a time later, so that if you were unable to make it, or if you didn't hear the whole thing, that we'll be able to capture it again. So again, thank you all for attending, and thank you so much, Lando, for sharing House of Rhythm with us today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Absolutely.